Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Master That English, where we understand, analyze, and interpret the important texts and concepts that may be part of your English curriculum. Our topic for today will be the analysis of a poem written by A.K. Ramanujan. So get your pens and notepads ready because here we go. A.K. Ramanujan, from the year 1929 to 1993. He was a renowned Indian poet, translator, folklorist, and scholar known for his deep exploration of Indian culture and identity in English. His full name is Atipate Krishnaswamy Ramanujan, born in Mysore. He later worked in the US, especially at the University of Chicago. He translated classical works from Tamil, Kannada into English and helped bring Indian literary heritage into English poetry. His famous works are the poetry collection like The Striders, Relations, and Second Sight. His well known poems comprise small scale reflection on a great house, obituary, and the Striders. Let us begin by first understanding his contribution to English poetry. A.K. Ramanujan is one of the most outstanding Indian English poet who, along with Ezekiel and Kamala Das, gave Indian English poetry an identity in the 1960s. He published 2 volumes of poems. The first was Second Sight in the year 1986 and the collected poems of A.K. Ramanujan incorporating the Black Hen in the year 1995 in the post-1980s period. Like Kamala Das, family is the main theme in these 2 volumes. His contribution to English poetry is important because he gave it a strong voice while using modern poetic styles. A.K. Ramanujan wants to put his vision, experiences into the texture of his poetry. It is the Hindu consciousness of Ramanujan's thinking that binds him to his Indian tradition. This enabled him to bring Indian life into English poetry by writing about family, traditions, rituals, relationships, memory, identity, and the conflict between tradition and modern life. He combined traditional Indian values with modern themes like identity and alienation, showing the tension between the past and the present. His poems reflect real Indian settings and cultural practices, making English poetry feel deeply Indian in context. What is the other important thing to understand is the style in which he writes as a poet. Ramanujan writes mostly in free verse, which is that he uses no fixed rhyme or meter and focuses on natural flow of thoughts and feeling that give his poetry a modern, flexible form. His style is simple and clear. He uses everyday conversational language without heavy decoration, yet expresses deep and complex ideas. His poems are easy to understand, but rich in meaning. They are often personal and reflective, making them relatable. He also uses gentle irony and subtle criticism to question social norms and traditions. His poetry makes readers think without being harsh or direct. Let us now try to justify the title, Small Scale Reflection of a Great House. Why is this title meaningful? Because it clearly shows the main idea of the poem, which is the great house stands for the traditional joint family home and represents culture, tradition, and continuity. It is like the small version of a society, as small scale reflection means that whatever inside the house reflects the outside world, the larger world. The daily activities and relationships and tradition show the bigger social and cultural patterns Indians follow in the present time. People take things away from the house and also bring things back, like memories, duties, or responsibilities. When they return, they are often more complicated, showing change and modernization in certain parts of Indian society from the outside world. Even with all this movement and change, the house keeps tradition and identity alive. It shows common human experiences like birth, death, and migration. So the title is justified because the house acts as a small model of a larger world, which is the traditional mode with which Indians would live, where simple family life reflects complex social realities, where through a simple family we are able to see the reflection of a complex social reality. Let us begin. What we see in the poem is a vivid picture of the traditional Indian joint family through the metaphor of a great house. The poem explores how such a system preserves culture and continuity but also restricts individual freedom through irony, symbolism, and everyday imagery. Ramanujan reflects on the complex relationship between tradition and individuality. When we begin from line 1 to 6, that begins with, "Sometimes I think that nothing that ever comes into this house goes out." Here in these lines, Ramanujan begins by describing the great house as a place where nothing is ever truly lost. This is an irony, as the house is shown as a self sustaining system with an unseen power. This great house is a symbol of Indian joint family and tradition. As like traditional families, the house preserves objects, values, and relationship across generations. The repetition of the phrase, "lost long ago," creates a sense of endlessness and continuous accumulation. As things keep gathering and disappearing into memory over time, this shows that the house reclaims what belongs to it in original or modified form, suggesting that individuals do not fully own things or experiences in this house. In the following lines 7 to 13, where he says, "Lame wandering cows from nowhere have been known to be tethered, given a name and encouraged." In these lines, Ramanujan draws attention to the typical rural scene of cows that are injured and roaming aimlessly. They are given a name, an identity, and encouraged to get pregnant under the supervision of elders, as they produce milk only after giving birth. So they contribute to the dairy production and sustenance of the family. So, where the animal enjoy liberty and freedom, in contrast, Ramanujan creates a strong visual image of confinement through the imagery of girls hiding behind the windows with holes. This is symbolic of the social restrictions forced on them. The holes allow only a partial and controlled view, indicating how tradition controls their lives and restricts their experiences. As windows symbolize barriers and holes are the restricted access, the contrast between the two worlds is created by the control inside the house and the freedom outside the house. In this way, the house has a clear demarcation of roles for animals and humans, keeping the social circumstance and the dignity and honor of the house intact. In the line 14 to 19, which starts with "unread library books usually mature in 2 weeks," what we notice here is the old man's office room where the unread books are collecting dust. Due to lack of use, the silverfish lay eggs on the ledger that mature in 2 weeks. This is an image of decay and stagnation in the house. This is suggestive of the lack of importance given to modern education, as house still gives more importance to traditional routines that follow family practices. Thus, the house becomes a place where unused things, because of neglect, eventually decay and undergo stagnation. In lines 20 to 26, which starts from breed dynasties among long legal words, what we notice here is Ramanujan highlights how families are structured, controlled, and preserved through legal systems. Long legal words are the wills, property papers, and documents for family continuity and inheritance. Highlighting the impact of legal system introduced by the Britishers to secure one's asset during the imperial rule. The use of the hyperbole, breed dynasties, emphasizes that the growth of family dynasties is controlled by wealth, property, and legal systems. The word succulence mocks how something dry as documents are treated as valuable and life giving. Ramanujan also hints at the overindulgence and routine social customs through the image of the food brought by neighbors during celebrations. He calls them greasy sweets, suggesting decadence and overindulgence during festivities. This overindulgence is introduced in the tireless preparations that carry all night day before yesterday. These religious rituals are celebrated like human weddings. We notice Ramanujan does not describe the rituals and focuses on greasy food more, suggesting rituals as a mode of collective assembly. Thus, Ramanujan critiques tradition, followed by generation as empty routines, as the focus is on wealth and habit than real meaning. In the line 27 to 35, where he says, never leave the house they enter like the servants and the phonographs. Here, once something enters the house, it is entrapped and loses its independence because the house has the ability to absorb and amalgamate it as a part of its own identity. Both animate and inanimate objects reflect the persona of the house, where the animate, like the servants, become emotionally attached to the house, forgetting their own roots. On the other hand, inanimate objects, like the phonographs, surrender to the everlasting obedience to the house by playing the same song without undergoing any wear and tear. Even the hereditary diseases, like ellipsis, are passed through generation and continue within the family line. In this way, the house has the capability of ensuring biological inheritance, social control, and stagnation. This social control of house can also be observed in the son in law that detach from their own families to do the accounts and teach the nieces and undergo loss of individual identity. As the house redefines relationships and loyalties, similarly, women who came into the family as new members also have to adhere to the norms of the home. Thus, the house has the power to reshape identities. Even when people leave the house, they remain emotionally and culturally tied to it. This creates a paradox, as one can physically leave but cannot escape the influence of tradition. The house thus extends beyond a physical space into the psychological and cultural force. In lines 36 to 42, where it starts with to the setting accustomed to wait and to yield to monsoons in the mountains calendar. The house is conditioned to a certain setting, as life inside the house follows the seasonal rhythm of nature, that is warm and hospitable, in contrast to the calendar that symbolizes the social constraints or modern clock driven time. By juxtapositioning these two objects, that is, the banana leaves and the calendar, he is showing the clash between the two worlds, the organic, cultural time, and the modern, clock driven time. The house contains both, so it becomes a space where tradition and modernity coexist but don't always fully harmonize. That long bill coming from outside is not just a literal detail, it is one of Ramanujan's sharpest ironic image in small scale reflections. How so? Because of the outside world entering the house, the great house looks self contained, full of tradition and continuity. But the bill comes from outside and brings in modern economic reality. This shows that the house is not isolated. It is connected to the larger system of money, debt, and transactions. So the bill is a symbol of growing expenses and burden the house has to bear. In lines 43 to 48, which starts with like the hoop bales of cotton shipped off to invisible Manchesters. In these lines, Ramanujan highlights the economic exploitation during colonialism. Raw cotton bales were packed for export by India to major textile centers in Manchester, which is in Britain, a place that was unknown to Indians during British rule. After it had been processed in factories, the same cotton returned in refined, finished commercial form, ready for resale. The same exploitation was noticed within the country. As Ramanujan critiques the social hierarchy within the society by the material they use, the fine and expensive fabric muslin, suggestive of luxury and sensuality, was meant for the elite to be used in their richer nights, while the common man used the simpler version of same material. In the next lines 49 to 55, which starts with have a way of finding their way back. In these lines, Ramanujan highlights the strong magnetism of the house that has the ability to retrace everything that belonged to it. Even communication in the form of a mail, like everything else in the poem, returns altered or delayed. The markings on the letter in the form of postal stamps, red ink, reflect the journey they have taken to find their way back to the house. This is one of the clearest metaphors in the poem. The letters, though they have traveled to culturally and geographically distant places like Tiruvalla and Saikot, still return to the house. He then shifts from physical letters to abstract ideas, as ideas are like rumors, for they spread informally, changing as they move. In this way, ideas return, transform, magnified, and sometimes distorted as something powerful or overwhelming. In lines 56 to 61, where he says, born to prodigal fathers with eyes that vaguely look like our own. Here, Ramanujan challenges the idea that knowledge flows only from west to the east by using a historical reference of Alexander the Great, who conquered parts of Asia, including regions near India. This suggests that Western knowledge may have its roots in the East. In the stanza, the prodigal fathers refers to the ancestors of the house who lost their assets, like the biblical prodigal son. The uncle represents an ancestral family voice. Ramanujan refers to Plotinus, a classical Western philosopher whose Western philosophy is studied in India. So, like the cotton that got transformed and returned, similarly, knowledge could have lost its origin and then returned home. When we see these lines on the post colonial realm, it is also suggestive of the fact that the colonized are not savage Calibans. They have roots and knowledge that correlates with the world today. So, just as Caliban in William Shakespeare's play The Tempest had his own culture, but the well read man could not understand this. Similarly, Indians were also having a culture, a tradition, and a history that the colonizer was not able to understand. Then in line 62 to 68, where he says, a beggar once came with a violin. to croak out a prostitute song that our voiceless cook sang. In these lines, Ramanujan highlights the magnanimity of the house that accepts the flaws of its members as well, as it does not filter anything. It absorbs even the undesirable, crude songs and flaws within traditional systems. It justifies this with the imagery of a beggar, an outsider of lower social status, who performed a harsh, unpleasant sound, something low, vulgar, socially considered a taboo. This socially unacceptable song enters the house as a cook sang it repeatedly. But what is interesting to see is that nobody in the house opposed. Thus, even the marginalized and voiceless cook keeps the song alive, though it is unwanted or impure. Similarly, the house also accepts the idiots that daughters of the house get married to. Even sons who try to escape the house eventually return to the house and have only left it for a temporary phase. In lines 69 to 74, where Ramanujan says, in grandchildren who recite Sanskrit, now the house ensures that the cycle of the great house continues unchanged across generations. How so? By ensuring that the traditional cultural training is given to the children that focuses on customs, rituals, and stories. Here, Sanskrit as a language plays an important role of grounding the children to their traditional roots through classical learning and religious tradition. The children are also taught social network skills that include offering betel nuts, that is a symbolic of traditional hospitality and social customs to an extended family or a guest. Thus, children learn the role of service, respect, and etiquette in the family structure that is maintained through a ritual behavior. Storytelling is also another important technique employed to keep the children familiar with their history as they listen with fascination to tales about ancestors. In this way, the past is romanticized and kept alive through narration. In line 75 to 81, which starts with in a copper pot for the last of the dying, what we notice here is that the poet draws attention to the reverence the house gives to the dead and the martyrs. By highlighting the traditional funeral rites, Ramanujan shows the respect for the dying by the imagery of the copper pot. As the copper pot is a symbol of tradition and ritual in Indian culture, where such vessels are used in the last rites, the phrase rattle in the throat suggests that the final rites before death of a person who is offered the holy water to ensure the purification and salvation of the soul. The house also values the members who have served their responsibility well outside the house and patiently waits for the body of the dead to perform the last rites. In this regard, he mentions the year 1943, the time of World War II, where Indian soldiers were killed near the Sahara. This distance delayed the arrival of their dead bodies, as the image of the dead body, half devoured by the desert foxes, suggests the difficulties faced in the transportation of the dead to his homeland. The story continues even in line 82 to 81, which shows the imagery of half gnawed by desert foxes. Here in these lines, Ramanujan creates a contrast between the external world and the house, highlighting the calm and lively environment within the house in contrast to the danger and neglect the external world creates to safeguard their interests. The delay in the postal network system is highlighted as an irony, as the family gets the body of the martyred soldier before the arrival of the telegram. containing the news. This suggests that on the scale of modernization, the external has reduced human tragedy to a label and official report. Hence, the ways of the outside world are dry and mechanical, noticed in the long transport route to bring the martyr home. In contrast to the house that has a warm space where it carries every funeral rite, keeping the tradition in mind, along with the patience to endure the tragedy. In this way, Ramanujan has personified the house like a Greek god that is capable of transforming and cultivating things as per culture and tradition that are a part of its identity. And that brings a conclusion to our analysis of this poem. I hope you have been able to get a rich insight into what the writer was trying to communicate through his clear imagery and expression about this great house that speaks about an identity and tradition which cannot be erased. India was going through a certain level of change because of the great level of influence, let's say modernized influence, we were accustomed with at that time. And with the change in time, I think the poet definitely did sense his house, which is representative of old tradition, was able to stand alone on its own and ensure that it is not losing its importance as it believes in whatever customs and tradition that it has been following through time. And that is what adds to the charm of this house. It's like a living being, almost personified, as we noticed. And I think that is what makes it interesting. Even an object can be personified to a great thing, a great culture, if the practices followed in that inanimate place have a sense of home, which I think is something Toni Morrison also spoke about, the concept of house and home. And I think this poem definitely does represent the idea of home beautifully as a thought and as a custom. So I hope it was interesting for all of you. Do give it a like, share it with those who you feel can benefit. And if you would like further recommendations in terms of what you'd like to hear in the future lectures, please do let us know. And until next time, this is me, Karishma. Take care.